good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. How's everyone doing? I had a couple false starts trying to get the my video going. I've had to switch back to an old phone and it was having a couple glitches. But we are here now. I'm having one of those days where technology just does not like me. My current phone just absolutely died. So I had to dig up an old phone to get us going. This is our first Saturday live in quite a while, so I'm really happy to see everybody. We're going to be doing these koi fish because they're super fun to paint, but I think it would be helpful to do it in real time so you can kind of see the brush strokes a little better. Because I know when we do the sped up videos, you know, they can be super helpful, but sometimes it's even more helpful to see it more in real time. So that's what we're going to do today. Where's everybody joining from? I'm just kind of prepping to get ready. Alabama, Florida, Oregon, the UK, nice. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and spray my watercolors so that they'll be ready to go. I think I'm actually going to do this a second time on black, and I'm going to use more opaque watercolors. But we're going to start off with just the normal one. Ohio, England, Erie, Belgium, Massachusetts, welcome, welcome to everybody. Is everybody ready to paint with me today? Give me a thumbs up if you've got your supplies and you're ready to go. Tennessee, we're getting some thumbs up. All right, so the point of today's exercise, well, first of all, with a lot of my exercises, they're meant to be low pressure, so we're just going to paint together and we're going to explore, and it's an excuse to get your paints out, and maybe this will spark some additional ideas. Maybe you'll take today's lesson and think, I want to add this, I want to add that, or maybe you'll go and do something completely different afterwards. But this exercise, we're going to be exploring some kind of wet on wet in very specific areas, and then we're going to be just kind of playing with the colors and letting our brush do as much of the work as we can. So I've got, I've been trying to actually use all my like really nice art supplies that I just have sitting on a shelf. And so I'm going to use some Arches paper today because I thought it'd be kind of fun to paint in this. It's a similar shape, I suppose, to the double sketchbook, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to do this. So what we're going to do, I'm actually going to flip this over so that I can try to situate this so we can see more of what I'm doing here. Oh, well, maybe that's not going to work. How am I going to do this so that you can see what I'm doing? I guess we'll just have to go over here. So the first thing I'm going to do, because it'll be easier for you guys to actually see, you can do this with just water, but I'm going to make a really light wash of kind of an orange color so that it'll be a little bit easier for you guys to actually see what I'm doing. In my video, I showed this both ways, where we do this with just water and then also with a light wash. But we're gonna try, at least on the first couple, to do a light wash of kind of an orangish color so that you can see what I'm doing. So I've mixed that up here. And I've got some little tester strips so you can see that this is a super light color, really, really light, but it's enough to where you'll better be able to see what's going on the page. And so we're going to start with that. Hello, hello. All right, I'm gonna grab this because I typically like to be able to kind of move things around while I'm working. And I'm gonna put a whole bunch of this light color solution into my brush. And then I'm gonna start just anywhere on the page by making kind of a teardrop shape. So I'm just kind of letting it round. And then once I get it looking about like this, then I'm just gonna swoop it to either side. This kind of reminds me of like, you know, paisley patterns that were really popular in like the 2000s. Was that the 90s or the 2000s? Kind of that basis shape. See how there's lots of water. If I get the reflection, you can really see it shining. And then I'm going to go over, and these are all wet, and I'm just going to grab straight from my watercolors, and I'm going to drop in some different colors. You could do whatever colors you want. I'm going to kind of stay a little bit true to koi colors with oranges and yellows, maybe a little black, maybe a little bit of red. But you can get as creative as you want with the color choices. Put a little black here. I personally like to see this even better when it's just with the clear water, but so you can see it, it's a little bit easier. Then I've washed my brush, and it's damp, but it's not super duper wet. And at the very end here, I'm just going to take the tip, touch, push, and drag, allowing that water to kind of flow into the tail. Again, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And now we've got a tail. The fins, it kind of depends on the koi fish you look at, but some of the references that I looked at, they had two sets of fins. Well, they have one on the top too, but the ones that we can see on the sides. And so we want to kind of take this body, the body from here to here, and split it into thirds, because the first set of fins is going to kind of come out from that third and just swoop. Let your brush do what it needs to. It's okay if it looks a little bit different on either side, because those fins really splay out depending on how they're swimming. And then at that second third point, a smaller one and a smaller one. Now at this point, you're like, okay, it's a blob. And yeah, it is. I'm just going to make sure I'm in focus. Yeah, I think I am. And you could leave it with the colors that are in there now. I like some of the things that are going on, but I want a little more concentration on a couple colors. So while it's still wet, I'm going to go ahead and drop in some more concentrated orange, just so that it can kind of flow around while it dries. I feel like that shine is really kind of making it difficult for you guys to see. I'm going to move my light just a bit. Yeah, the 90s for the paisley things. And we're painting koi fish. So they're really simple koi fish. We're just kind of focusing on brush stroke shapes and dropping colors in and letting them do whatever they want. It'll end up looking a little something like this at the very end. I'm going to add some pen details at the very end. All right, so I've got one done. The next one I'm going to do with just water so that you can kind of see what happens there. And I'm going to rotate my page. I kind of want to think about adding these in. I'm going to add them in kind of like a puzzle. So I'm going to rotate my page so that I can work at an angle that it works for me. And I'm going to start that same way, where I'm going to make kind of a rounded shape. You can see if I get the reflection right, that rounded shape. But then I'm going to bring it into kind of that paisley type shape where we swoop a little bit to one side. So let's see if we can see that shape there in the reflection. The next one I'll do a light wash again, but I want you to see this as well. Then I'm just going to start dropping in some of those different colors. I'm going to start with a little yellow. Then I'm going to go into some of that orange. I'm going to wash my brush and then grab some pretty concentrated black to drop in a couple areas where there's not any color currently. Just like that. We've got kind of this weird shape. I'm going to wash my brush, And I'm going to kind of scrape it on the top of the cup so that I've taken a lot of the water out, but it's still pretty wet. And then at the very end, I'm going to touch the tip of my brush here, swoop, and drag. That was a pretty big one. Well, this one has a very fancy tail. I'm going to come over to the other side, touch, press, swoop, and drag. Cutting this into thirds. At the first third, I'm just going to touch and swoop out. Other side, same thing. And then down another third, a smaller one for those fins. And see how when we don't do the wash first, some of those colors kind of stay a little more separated. Sometimes I like that. I'm gonna do another one, but let's do it with a light yellow base so that we can see it. And then I always like to test my colors once I mix them up here, because a lot of times they look a lot different on the paper than they do here. So I'm going to put a little more water because I want that to be a little bit more watery, so it's a little lighter so it won't affect the other colors quite as much. Something a little more like that. And I'm going to add in another one. This one I'm going to have coming in this direction, but I'm going to swoop it the other way. And again, I'm just really putting a bunch of water in there, making kind of that teardrop shape. And then I'm just going to start dropping in some extra color. I'm going to keep this one a little bit more simple, I think. Just a little red and a little orange. Wash my brush, scrape off the majority of the water. I'm going to grab that little drop here, pull, push, and drag. I'm going to let these kind of go off the edges because I like that. Then we're doing fins at 1/3 of the way down and 2/3 of the way down. The ones that are at 1/3 of the way down are a little bit longer than the ones that are at 1/3 or 2/3 of the way down. Okay. Then I'm gonna go, I feel like maybe one should go this direction. So I'm just fitting these in like a puzzle. This one I'm going to do with water. And let's make his head about here. Making that teardrop type shape. You can also play with the sizes that you make their bodies and things. If you wanted to have some koi fish of various sizes. All right, so this one I put lots and lots of water in. It's really flowing around. I think I'm going to add more color in a second to it, but I think first I'm going to define the shape to get some of that water to flow in to like the tail. And into those fins. Before I then go in, and I think I'm going to put some black dots in it. Need a little more concentration there. Maybe right at the tip of his head too. This could be really fun to do with just really crazy wild colors as well. But I do kind of like the theme of doing it with these oranges and yellows. I'm just going to look in the comments here. Make sure that I'm not missing anything. Somebody asked if they could go live and show me. I would love to see paintings. I've thought about doing lives where we could share things. I am a little nervous about it. I don't think we'll do that today, but it's something I've been thinking about. And yeah, these would be great to combine with the lily pad tutorial that I did the other day. You married my son. Yeah, I'm very happily married. But thank you for the offer. Well, you did red, blue, and purple. Ooh, I bet that's beautiful. brush I'm using is one that I sell. It's a quill brush that I had made. I love it. They're very similar. Quill brushes, here, let's actually take a second. I'm going to use a round brush. Quill brushes are similar to round brushes, but round brushes have a little less movement in them and they hold a little less water. Now, in general, I think that a round brush like this is actually better for a beginner because it doesn't have as much flowiness to it. So you have better control over what's actually happening. So I do typically recommend this. And then a quill brush is like, once you've kind of got the hang of a lot of the brush strokes, a quill brush is great because it'll kind of introduce a little extra flowiness, but you'll have the skills to actually use the flowiness to your advantage instead of being overwhelmed by it. Not to mention that a round brush like this is a lot cheaper than a quill brush. So when you're first starting, a lot of times you just want to get, a couple little supplies. And I think that's important to keep things, where it's not too expensive. All right, I'm going to add another one here. And I'm going to do this with the round brush so that you can see. See how the bristles, they do have a lot of nice movement to them, but it's a little more controlled. I have a little more kind of say over where they actually go. I mean, I do with the other one too now, but if I had tried to use that quill brush like on my very first couple attempts, I would have been like, whoa, this is way too much for me to be able to control. Okay, I'm going to wash my brush, and then I'm going to grab tip here, push and drag, and we might have to drop some more water in those so that we can actually see where they're at. Let's put a little more color there. And then again, at a third and a third is where we're going to make those. So a third of the way down, third of the way down. This one's a little bit bigger. This one's a little shorter. Bigger, shorter. And I feel like you can kind of see the difference a little bit in that this one is, it's very similar, but there is a little more kind of control. It's a little bit more precise. Most people that I've talked to have a similar experience when they are learning watercolor. You go through phases of like, you want to learn how to do it, obviously, which you feel at first like you have like no control. But then you get to a point where you start to try to control things too much. So then you start to crave a little more free flowingness. And that's when you often will want something like a quill brush. All right, I'm going to keep adding these in. Paint one where there's white exposed. Sure, let's try to make one where the water stays a little bit more separated. I am using colors that flow together a little bit more. And so here, actually, if I use, this is a handmade color that I make. And handmade colors often, because of the supplies that most hand makers use, they tend to be a little more where they sink and kind of sit. They can flow together really nicely, but I find them easier to control kind of the placement sometimes. So I'll try to use that orange so that we can actually see which way do I want this one to go. I kind of feel like they should all kind of be, let's do these three kind of looking at each other. So I'm going to start with water. I'm also going to make sure, if I want to make sure that there's going to be a little white that's exposed, I don't want it to flow around quite as much because the placement will stay a little bit closer to where I place it. So see when I put this here, see how there's that puddle right here? I'm actually going to take my brush and just grab a little bit of that. I dried my brush and I'm going to grab a little bit more. And then I'm going to take some of this orange and drop this in a couple places. I love this orange so much. It's so bright. I'm going to be a little bit more careful about where I place it. I'm also going to take a little black. And I try to keep it simple. Wash my brush, tap it so that it's a little bit dry, and then let's pull this and swoop. Pull and swoop. Swoop, 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 and swoop. I feel like the tail needs a little bit more color. Maybe let's put a little bit of that there. And then I'm going to try to just let that kind of be, because we said we wanted some white exposed. So see how I've done this in two ways, trying to keep that white there. The first is I did not wet my paper as much. The second is I've kind of tried to place these where they're a little bit further apart so they're not going to bleed together. And then I used colors that didn't have that huge push, that huge push of color. So you can kind of see the shape here. And it will bleed out a little bit into those areas, but not a ton. Liquid watercolors could be cool, for sure. I do have some liquid watercolors, although I think I mainly have blues. One of the questions is what made me get into making my own colors. I just really love it. I find it to be a very methodical process. In addition, it's kind of my time where I do sometimes share a little bit of the process, but it's like one of those things where I don't, because there's a ton of people who do share the process on here, it's like I don't have to film the entire thing. And so then I feel kind of a little bit more like I can really zone out, and I don't have to pay attention to is it in focus? Is it, it's just a fun activity. Plus I love playing with the colors. I love creating new colors. And I just really enjoy it. Going with a lot of little dots on this one. And then we're gonna, got a little too much water there. We're gonna swoop and swoop. The pen details on this are really what's going to make this pop in a little bit. So I think I'm going to do one more that's kind of swimming up in this direction, and then I'm going to, one more full one, and then I'm going to do a couple hints to some of these flowing off the page. But that's kind of how I want my composition to go, where it's really busy kind of at the top, and then it starts to kind of fade out, and then this is kind of one of the main focal point ones. All right, I'm going to start with that yellow again. I like this one, but I think I'm going to do basically this one, but with some black in it as well. Do I want it to swoop this way or this way? I think I want it to go this way. Maybe it should have swooped the other way. Oh well. Grab a little of that black here. Okay. Wash my brush, tap it so that it's wet but not too wet. Touch, press, and drag. You can also use the direction you're holding your paper to influence it to flow into these different spots. I feel like I need a little more concentration on some of these colors. So I'm just going to go ahead and touch those in. Ooh, I like how that one's, the colors are on that one. And it's going to look kind of goofy until we actually add in those details. I'm going to go review the comments real quick, and then I'll answer whatever questions while I fill in those little gaps and the hints to some of the fish that are not right on the page, but are kind of either heading off or heading into the page. What am I drying my brush on? Okay, here I'll show you guys. So I wish I could show you more of my work surface because it is helpful to see the setup, but it's hard to fit everything in. So off to the side, I have a rag, and then this is a very dirty paper towel because you can actually reuse them quite a bit. I have that on top of it. I find the paper towel really soaks up the water better, but then you go through a ton of paper towels and it can really soak through down to your work surface. So I've found that if you layer it on top of a normal towel, that it kind of makes it so that you can use the paper towel for longer and it keeps your work surface cleaner. So that's what I usually dry it off on. All right, so there are questions about beginner supplies. Beginner supplies are a really tricky question for me to answer because it depends on a ton of things. It depends on the access you have because you might live somewhere else or might have limited access to supplies. It also depends on budget and a whole bunch of different things. I would recommend, I do have a supply guide on my site where I talk about some differences in supplies and have different price points and things like that. And I do talk about the supplies that I sell in it, but I also offer some recommendations because I know not everybody who follows me. I only do shipping to the US because I can't, I don't have the capacity currently to be able to offer international shipping. And so I've got some supplies that are more widely available kind of around the world so that there are some additional options and popular brands and things like that. And then I also do discuss in it like some different price points so that you have multiple options depending on what your price points are. So right now I'm just kind of hinting to where some of these different fish are. Kind of coming in, which I think will help bring attention more to the ones that are already on the page. Okay, let's take a look. Yeah, I like that. All right, I'm going to leave this like this for now. Oh, you've bought my paints and love them. Oh, good. I'm so glad. I'm quite biased, but yes, I love them too. You've been drawing these fish for days now. They are fun. Also, I started doing this one the other day. I have not finished it or added in the pen details, so it's definitely has an unfinished look to it. But I think I'm gonna try to do it like other fish, like a school of fish. I think this one could be really fun to add some pen details. I need to finish working on this one, and maybe this will make it into a video, depending on how it ends up looking. But I don't know, I love finding those animals that it's just a couple brush strokes. Like, you don't have to do a ton of work, and then you kind of let the watercolor tell the story, and then you just add in those hints with the pen to kind of like really complete the picture. There's a question about the colors that I put in my palette. So this is, well, you have to ignore these ones here, but this is my set of 18. I do multiple things. So I have manufactured paints, which allows me to offer paints at a lower price point. Plus, manufactured paints do have different properties than a lot of handmade paints. These ones, they're more transparent and they flow together in a more kind of predictable or expected way, as most watercolors do. But I offer it in this 18 set so that you have these empty spaces so that you can fill them with whatever you want. So maybe you find that you really like Winsor Newton's Phthalo Blue, or you really like Daniel Smith's Moon Glow or something like that. You could get a pan of that and then you can stick it in here. So you can kind of complete and make a custom set. Or what I've done, which is I've put in some of my favorite handmade colors that I make. I've got some metallics and then I've got some of my neons. And handmade colors are really fun because, well, I don't know. I really like them because they're a little more textured. I like them because you can really get some really interesting custom color combinations. And so I've placed them in here. I'm going to actually explore in a second because some of my colors are a little bit more opaque. And so I think I want to do this a second time on black paper to see what it would look like to add in some of those more opaque colors just onto the black to see if it would look neat with the koi. So I'm going to let you guys vote in the comments on what you want me to do. We can either dry this one and then I can add in some of those pen details so you can see this come to life all in one, or we can just let this one dry while I paint on the other one, and then we'll come back to this one and add the pen details. Let me know in the comments what you want to see. Do you want me to finish off this one, or are you curious about the black paper and the other stuff? Pen details. All right, your ADHD will never return. Fair enough. Okay, so I'm gonna move this to the side here, and we're gonna dry this. I'm using a heat gun to do this. If you use a heat gun, you don't want it to set on one area for too long. Also, if anybody has any sleeping babies or any sort of sensory issues, now is a good time for you to turn the volume down for probably about 20 to 30 seconds. Because TikTok does a pretty good job of canceling the noise out, but I know it can kind of have that like start of a weird noise. So I'm going to be turning this on in 3, 2, and 1. You like the sound of it? Now that we're done drawing and dancing, you can grab a pen. I like a felt tip pen. When we're working on dry watercolor, you can use any pen. It doesn't have to be waterproof as long as you're not going to paint on top of it. If you plan to paint more on this, you're going to want to use a waterproof pen. But for now, I'm just going to use whatever I can grab over here. What do I have? I grabbed the first pen I have, this is actually a waterproof pen, but you don't have to. This is a Pentel point liner. It's water and fade resistant. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in these details. Now I'm going to share the finished result from the other one so that you can see. You might have a different answer to this, and that's totally fine. You could really go in and add as many details. You could even draw in scales and things. The type of artwork that I really am drawn to, though, is more artwork that has a little bit more unfinished. My brain likes to kind of complete part of the picture for me. It finds that a lot more appealing. So you'll notice that the pen details on here are pretty light. I don't necessarily outline the whole thing. I kind of just add in a spine and then a little bit of scribbles kind of to define how those fins might have texture. And then the eyes. So that's where I kind of tend to how I tend to do some of my sketching and things like that. I err on the side of a little bit too little than a little too much, but this could be done in a really beautiful way with lots of details if you're really into pen work. So you can have a totally different answer than me on this. All right, we're just going to start. And I do think I'm going to kind of define the little mouth, but again, I'm just going to kind of hint to it, just barely hinting to it. And then I'm going to add in kind of a hint to some of those eyes on the side of their head. And then let's hint to that spine. So I'm going to kind of follow the direction of this. And I'm going to be okay if it's a little bit choppy because I want it to feel kind of organic. And again, I'm just going to kind of hint to some of those details. This is what I like to do with mine. Again, you can have a totally different answer. You could even kind of hint. Sometimes they have a little like extra fin up here, so I'm just going to kind of hint to maybe that there is one. This pen is actually not working super great on the one side. I'm going to grab a different one. We'll see if this one works a little better. I don't feel like I have a lot of control with that other one. Okay. I'm going to add this one in too, again, kind of hinting to that mouth. I'm being loose with the details, plus since we have so many of them, it kind of helps complete the entire thing together where like our brain's like, well, yeah, this is koi fish, you know? If there were just one of them, we might have to add in more details. It's that, I don't know if anybody's ever heard that theory about like group pictures where you always look better when you're in a group of people than just like a single picture. It's like, it's less work to look good in a group picture because there's a lot of things for your eye to look at. Not that you don't look good in a single picture, but like there's I don't remember. Does anybody know the name for that? There's like a phenomena about that. Okay, I just noticed that somebody's username is a wild Moogie. I need to know more about your username because my dog's name is Moogie. Your watercolors flake when you do pen work. I'm curious to know what type of watercolors you're using because I have tried a couple types where they flake off, and I've typically found it being the brand. They use more of a chalky base. We're almost more of a gouache type style. Your 6 koi fish is looking like a koi. Yay! It's from Michael's, the cheaper ones. What brand is it? All right, somebody asked me to zoom in, so instead of zooming in, I'll hold this up and kind of show the pen details. Hopefully I can keep this steady enough. So again, I'm kind of just defining a little mouth, like hinting to it here. And then I'm just scribbling in or hinting to those eyeballs they have. Some koi fish and goldfish have really bulgy eyeballs, so you could really go crazy with this if you wanted to. And I'm going to kind of hint to that spine. And I'm literally just kind of scribbling along some of the fins to give them some texture. You could even kind of redefine the shape of them if you wanted to. Not my favorite one I've scribbled on, but it'll work. And then see how it kind of fits into it? Oh, the tail and the head, I just made little swoops. Just swoop, swoop. I'm gonna do a second one and just on black paper, but the principles of the brush strokes will be the same. So we'll see it again. Oh, that's really cute. That's really sweet. I'm just going to add these in. I'm just scribbling. You can always define, you can change. When I make my exercises, I try to make things that are going to be really adaptable. So depending on your skill sets or how things go, you can kind of compensate for things in different ways. Like with these koi fish, if the shapes are not what you wanted to, you can kind of use the pen to adjust them. Make certain areas a little bit thinner. Sure, it might have the paint going a little bit over the edge, but that's okay. That could be a look. Just lean into it. But you could also make them thicker or... There. Look at that little guy. He's just poking his head in. My goal when I make little exercises, well, I've got a couple goals. The first is I want you to grab your paints and just have a little fun. The second is, to make something that you're going to feel successful at, but it will ultimately kind of help you practice something, and something that's adaptable so that even if yours doesn't look exactly like mine, you're going to be like, yeah, but look what I did here, Like you kind of make it your own. I love that. Ooh, I like this little guy here. He might be my favorite so far. And then for the background, I'm not going to add a background. You can add a background. I've gotten a couple questions on the video being like, how do you add a background? The solution is to say very carefully, because that's actually kind of the truth. You can add it afterwards. You just have to very carefully paint in all these little details. You could, at the very beginning of this, have masked off some of these so that you could paint the background and then you could peel it off. You could kind of combine the water lily painting where we lifted. You could try to do that. There's a whole bunch of different ways too, but I kind of like the simplicity of not having a background. This kind of reminds me of like a wrapping paper or something, or like it would be cute on a tea towel. I kind of like the look of that. Plus, there's not a ton that I can actually say about adding the background, and it will take just as much time as actually painting the fish, so... I do think I've got some live replays where we did do stuff with backgrounds, and I also cover that. I've got some online courses where we do talk about that in a couple different ways, where I do kind of go slow and really try to offer some options. There we go. Look at our little fishies. All right, so I'm going to move over to the black paper. You made a background that's sort of like a glass beach mosaic. Oh, pretty. Brand is Artist Loft. Artist Loft, I like their acrylics. I do not like their watercolors, though. Well, okay, that's not entirely true. If you get the tube paints of the Artist Loft acrylics, there are about 5 of them that are pretty good, but out of their like 30 colors that are available, the rest, they're questionable for sure. And I can't even remember it's been a while since I've tested them, but I think their Phthalo Blue is pretty good. I think their Quinacridone Magenta is pretty good, and then they have a yellow that's pretty good too. But there's a couple that aren't pretty good, so. All right, so here's this one. We're going to switch over. I'm going to switch paints. So I'm going to switch over to my handmade colors because they're a little more opaque, so they're actually going to stand out a little bit more from the paper. You can use the more transparent colors on this. You just won't be able to see them as much. And I kind of want to be able to see them a little better. So this is my little case I have with all my handmade colors in it. And I'm just going to spritz, especially these ones, because those are the main ones I'm going to be using, plus maybe some of the blackish colors. And this is black watercolor paper. This is from Legion. This is the best black paper I have ever tried. They've got cold press paper. It like the way that gold, oh, you know what? I'm going to spray some gold. We're going to put some metallics into this one too. The way the gold sits on this is just absolutely stunning. And like I do sell this one. I also sell little tiny pads of this. So if you just want to like try it to be like, would I even ever use this? I have like these tiny, teeny, tiny little pads that are great for kind of experimenting to see what you like. Okay, so with this one, we can start with the water or not. I'm going to start with kind of that light wash. I'm not going to be quite as precise with the color because since it's on black watercolor paper, we're going to have to really kind of bump this up a little bit. I'm just going to start wherever I feel like. This is kind of a lighter wash of this color. And let's swoop to one side. And then let's really drop in some of those more opaque colors. I'm going to drop in some metallic too. Because metallic and black watercolor paper, metallic watercolor, oh my gosh, they are absolutely a match made in heaven. Washing my brush, and then we're just going to kind of swoop and pull. Swoop and pull. Third of the way down, third of the way down. And then I'm going to really pack in a bunch of that gold in those fins. I'm being pretty generous with the amount that I'm putting into some of those fins. And you won't be able to see this super well, and it's going to look a little bit flat. The one thing that I love about black watercolor paper and metallics is you've probably experienced this before where you're putting paint down on the paper and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so pretty when it's wet and it's flowing around and it's bright and it's vibrant. And then since watercolor lightens as it dries, then you go to, you dry it and you're like, well, hold on, it's kind of lost some of its vibrancy and it's not as exciting as it was. But with black paper and metallics, once they dry, they get shinier and there's just something special about them. Okay. I made my teardrop shape. I'm going to put in a bunch more color in certain parts of these. Let's put a little silver on this one. I'm going to let that flow in together. Wash my brush, tap it so that it's dry-ish, but not too dry. And do the tail. Pull. I'm going to drop a little more color in there before that dries. And then let's pull those fins out. I kind of try to make them move a little bit in the direction, like I'm kind of thinking about how they're swimming and how they'd be, their fins might move. Let's do one here. Oh, I'm going to use some of this. This is like a yellow ochre type color. I love yellow ochre. It's one of my favorite yellows. It's kind of golden, but like a little greeny. Pulling that down. Let's drop in some additional color here. I'm going to put some red too. Put a little down here as well. Washing my brush, tapping it so it's a little bit dry, grabbing here, pulling and flicking. think these are going to look really neat when they're dry. All right, the next one I think I'm going to start with a base of gold. And after I paint this one, I'll look at the comments. I have been totally ignoring the comments because I am just really excited about this. Sorry. All right, I'm going to bring, this one is just gold. This would actually be really pretty to do just with just metallics. Oh yeah. I'm just going to go ahead and swoop these now because I want this to mainly be, but I am going to drop some other colors in here. Let's do some of that orange. Maybe he's got little tiny spots. Okay, I'm going to leave that one a little bit more simple. And I think I'm going to, once I do add in a few more of these, I will dry this, and I think I'm going to add in the pen details with white on this one. I'm so glad you got your paints out. How do I make my colors? It's a very similar process to how Burgette Pigments or Dreamland Watercolor makes theirs. I don't usually talk about how I make them and stuff because I feel like there are creators on here who are doing a really good job of kind of showing that off. And yeah, I mean, there's not much else I can say other than, yeah, you take a, you know, you need the molar and you need your watercolor binder and you need your pigments. But yeah, if you are interested in how to do that, I would check out Burgette Pigments. She has like a whole video, and I think she even sells her own watercolor binder, so that if you didn't want to have to try that out, she'd be a good one to actually show you how to do that. It requires a decent number of supplies to do it, but she also has some solutions on how to kind of do stuff with some makeshift supplies. Just swooping and swooping here. Maybe this one needs a little, oh, you know what? I'm going to use a little black sand beach. Did I spray this one? Here we go. This is kind of like a purpley black color with a little bit of shine. And I'm dropping in metallics on this one as well a little bit, so it'll have a little extra shine. Not as much as, say, that one, but it will have some. All right, I'm going to paint one more on this, then I'm going to dry it and I'll add the pen details. I might come back in and add more, but we are getting close to the end of the live time. I'll probably end up going over a little bit, but I don't want to, I need to eat lunch and stuff. So, yeah. And I got a lot of things to do today, including buying a new phone, apparently, since my current one. The one I'm using right now is a really old phone that does work, but it has some battery issues. So, oh yeah, and it is almost dead. So, it's working in a pinch, but it is not going to last me forever. I think this one needs some silver in it. Oh, wait. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? This is my new favorite silver that I added to the store. It's called Ice. It is gorgeous. I need to let it sit for a second. I'll drop it in after I add in these, the fins. Pull and swoop. Need a little more water in there to grab it together. All right, grabbing that silver. This one is just stunning. We're going to be like Sammy today. We're going to mix our metals. We've got silver and we've got gold on the page. so glad you're getting inspired to paint. Well, I'm going to let this one soak in just a little bit because I've got some big puddles of water on this one. And I do typically like to let the big puddles kind of at least soak in a little bit before I use my heat gun because it can blow those all around. So we're going to kind of let them chill out for a second. I'm going to be adding in the pen details with the white. This is my new favorite white gel pen. This is by Uniball, the Signo ones. The funny thing is I bought these. I talked about this the other day, but I bought them because I saw them demonstrated with their silver and gold, and so I was like, yes, I need that. And it came in a pack where it had white too, and so I was just testing them, and I was like, yeah, these are really, really pretty. But then this one had the best coverage I had ever seen in a white gel pen. So that was a very pleasant surprise. Oh, I like this on the black. I like it a lot. All right, I am going to go ahead and dry this. I'll read the comments while I'm drying it. Again, if you have sleeping babies or any sort of sensory issues, if you need to, I would recommend turning your volume down for about 20 or 30 seconds, just in case TikTok doesn't help mute the sound very well. And this will be happening in 3, 2, and 1. All right, that took a little bit longer than expected. I saw somebody who's been here for a whole hour. Oh, I'm so excited you actually were wanting to paint. There were some discussions about this pen. I am curious. This is the first time I've used it on black paper. I've only used it on top of painted areas, so we'll see how good it stands up to the black paper as well. Before we do that, though, I don't know if we can really see the shine on this. Let's see if it'll... You can kind of see that flash. Look at how it's... In real life, this is so shiny. It looks like gold jewelry, and this is so shiny with the silver. I'm having a hard time getting it to really show off, but I'm loving this. There's part of me that's torn of even adding in the pen details, but I said I was going to do it, and I think it could look cool, so we're going to try it, and we'll see how good it does on top of the metallics, because I also haven't tried this on metallics. I've only done it on, like, blues and greens and things like that. So we'll see how it works. We'll start over here with this one. I really like how it has that kind of modeling. There's a little bit of silver, a little bit of that black, shiny black poking through. Okay, here we go. We're going to add in the pen details. I don't know why I'm nervous about this, but I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up. And I'm kind of just hinting. I mean, look at that. Do you see that coverage on that white? That is crazy. Whoa. Okay, it works good. I like it. I like it. I do think I might like the fish without the pen details. What do we think? Should I add it to more, or should I leave the fish as they are? Do we like the pen? Do we not like the pen? I mean, the pen works great on top of all those things, but... Oh, we're split. We have half and half of liking the pen details and not. Okay, so some people said they we're gonna try a couple things. Some people said they liked the eyes. Here, let's add in the eyes on this one. We're experimenting at this point. We'll define the mouth just a bit. Let's add in those eyes. We're gonna do a combo of the black and the white pen on this one. I actually don't. What color are? Oh, I went a little bit too big. That's okay. I'm gonna outline it even more with. So I'm gonna put in a little bit of that white on kind of the tips here, and then we're gonna come in with the black pen. I gotta wait for the white gel to dry for just a second because I really kind of globbed it on those eyes. But we'll try to add in the black in addition. I don't know how this is gonna work, so we're just trying things out to see what we like. I don't think experimenting is ever a waste, so. And here, let's put. Okay. Maybe we're onto something with combining the two. What do you guys think? Do we like combining the white and the black gel pen? That is kind of fun. I'm going to go back in and let's see if it improves this one too. I think it does. That's fun. It's real subtle, but it does kind of improve it. Interesting. Okay, really interesting. I'm still kind of torn in that I just like the pattern of these fish on their own, and that maybe you don't need the pen details. Because the other thing you could do... Alright, we're going off the rails here. The other thing we could even do is kind of add in like rippling of water. I don't know if this is going to work very good. Around some of these shapes. Instead of outlining them if you wanted to. Oh, I kind of like that. I kind of like adding in a little bit of the texture without having to paint it in. Here's how you could add a background in. Little squiggly shapes. I'm just kind of squiggling in the areas around. I don't know. I don't exactly know what I'm doing. Sometimes you just gotta try something, This was not part of the plan, but kind of like it. I kind of really like it. That is fun. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to go across the page with this. We're officially over time, so I'm not going to finish adding in the pen details to the other fish because I'm still kind of deciding if I like that or not. But I'm going to add the rest of this in. Let's see. This is very satisfying to me. Very satisfying. Some of you are probably like, no, why do you keep doing that? But I like it. This is probably, you know what's funny is whenever we go live here, I'm always like, I'm going to teach you guys something. And then I end up playing, and then usually whatever we do to kind of play is like the favorite thing that we do for me. It's like we get to discover something together, and I think that's really fun. Yeah, you could definitely play with the size of them. That's absolutely true. That would for sure help with some different perspective things. Yeah. Oh, that's fun. Okay. Officially really like that. You could probably do something with like silver pen or even like a different color pen in a similar way on that one, but there's something to that. I do think I will probably come back. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see if I even revisit this. A lot of times I just kind of keep them as they are for the live one, so I have a record of what we did and things in case I ever want to kind of revisit it. Officially. Well, I really appreciate you guys spending some time with me. I am excited to get back to, for those of you who are new around here, by the way, my name's Lacey. I'm the artist behind Rebel Unicorn Crafts. And I used to do live watercolor classes every other week on Saturday mornings. And we've kind of gotten out of that because I was in the process, and still am in the process, but of writing a book about watercolor. It will be coming out. The target date, I believe, is in the fall of this year. And so I have written everything that I need to write, and now we're kind of in the stages of editing and reviewing and kind of improving things as I see fit and kind of review what I've done. But it took a lot of my brain power, and so I just needed a little bit of extra time to be able to do that. But now I'm not having to come up with all those ideas, so now I'm kind of overflowing with fun ideas that I want to play with, or at least things that I think are fun. So I'm going to be getting back to a more regular schedule with that. If you really like lives like this as well, I also do a Patreon. I have a Patreon, and we do one live a month that's more like a Google Meet, where you can ask questions, and it's usually based on some sort of question or topic that people are really curious about. And so we explore variables a lot in those, but it's a little bit more personalized because I can actually see you, I can actually talk to you guys more in person, so that's kind of fun. But I will keep doing, this is also something I really like doing, so we will keep doing these every other Saturday for the most part. Sometimes I obviously have to miss for different things, but this is my general schedule, so the next one won't be next week, it'll be the week after. And no matter what, I'm just so glad you came here today. I'm so glad if you got your paints out, or if you just watched and maybe this will inspire you to do something later. Or maybe you just needed to relax. I don't know. You do you. Yeah, you can ask questions through the Patreon and things like that, absolutely. I do try to keep an eye on the comments here, but it's, the Patreon is meant to be a smaller group where we can have more of a discussion and things like that. Whereas on here, there's usually a lot more people, and so it's harder for me to give kind of individualized attention. I appreciate everyone. I hope everybody has an absolutely wonderful day, and I will see you guys again soon.